All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to kind of Bug Watch, kind of 6++ show. We're going to be talking about Tyranids as you are come. So normally would expect from me, we are going to be chatting about the top and bottom, like how to get into this faction, the top line rules, and some of the use cases for them. A few tips on how I would use them moving forward. So let's get into it. First up, we've got the faction rule. A faction rule is synapse. If your army faction is Tyranids, while a Tyranid unit is from your army is within 6 inches of one or more synapse models from your army, that unit is said to be within synapse range of your army. So you get, like, every synapse unit has an aura essentially, and everyone within that aura essentially gets this buff. Each time a Tyranid unit from your army takes a battle shock test, if it is within synapse range of your army of a synapse unit, take that test on 3d6 rather than 2d6. So what does this mean? Well, battle shock, essentially, you have a leadership value. You need to roll over that value to pass a battle shock test. We get to roll 3 dice, which is good because most of our leaderships are between 6 and 8. So some of the ones that are 8, the fact that we're rolling on 3 dice just gives us that better chance of not being battle shocked. And you might be saying, Dave, what the hell is battle shock? This is new. Yeah, battle shock, what it does is it takes your AC to, among other things, but the big things are it moves your OC, which is your objective control, how many bodies you count as on an objective, to 0. And you also cannot have stratagems used on you. So, for example, interrupts, fight on deaths, all that kind of stuff that people have, they cannot use stratagems on that unit. So it's very useful. Cool. So we basically take those tests on 3 dice. Not only that, we have another synergy with Battle Shock. You become very familiar with it, with Shadow in the Warp. This is another one of our faction rules. So once per battle, so you can do it once per battle, in either player's command phase, if one or more units of your units are alive, you can unleash, ladies and gentlemen, the Shadow in the Warp. When you do, each enemy unit on the battlefield takes a battle shock test. So this is great if your opponent has loads of units or you're contesting objectives with your opponents on a objective, or if there's, for example, like, I don't know, they've got a really killer unit that you think might fail a battle shock test and you're about to charge them. There's loads of ways that you can utilize this to try and get a benefit. What I found in testing so far is it's not amazing. It's very much a gamble. Like, it's a nice to have. It's not definitely going to happen unless you're playing grots or something like that. So just get used to this being like a nice thing to have, but not amazing. Of course, there are buffs to this as well that you can give. So, for example, the Haruspecs, whenever it kills a unit, it gives your opponent -1 to their battle shock test. Oh, no, they have to take a battle shock test. Sorry. There's another unit, I think it might be the new Neurotyrant, actually, which reduces the leadership of your opponent. Therefore, the battle shock test is more likely to fail. So there's ways you can manipulate it a little bit, and we have a few units that can help do that. You can actually build around this and have a lot of units that do that, and that's definitely something worth trying. I'm not sure it's super good, but it'd be a very fun list to play, watching all your opponent's units just battle shock to death. Be great. All right, so that's the faction rule. Next up, we've got sorry, it's not faction rule, this is our detachment. Our detachment is an invasion fleet. So what this does is it gives us a really cool ability, a really cool flexibility when it comes to playing. At the start of the first battle rounds, we can just choose what we're good at that game. So we can choose one of these 3 things at the start of the battle round. First one is Swarming Instincts. Each time a Tyranid model with this hyper adaptation makes an attack that targets an enemy infantry or swarm unit, that attack has the sustained hits ability. 6s explode. Brilliant. So if you're against loads of models, you can help wipe them out by getting those extra hits in. Very nice. Very cool. Next one, hyper aggression. Now, I won't lie, this is my favorite, right? Because we're going to see loads of vehicles, we're going to see loads of shooty stuff, and I think this is pretty good. So every time we target a monster or vehicle, the attack has the lethal hits ability. So on 6s, we auto wound, which is really nice because a lot of these monsters. So a lot of these things will be shooting at vehicles, etc., have really high toughness. We don't have that many guns with high strength. So how do you wound them? You auto wound them on 6s, baby. Let's do it. So you get loads of shots in there. Auto wound on 6s is very nice. The last one, if you maybe, again, I've not played some armies, but maybe against GSC or something like that, this could be quite useful. So each time a Tyranid model with this hyper adaptation makes an attack at targets an enemy character, if a critical hit is scored, that attack has the precision ability, so you can put wounds onto their characters that are within units. Quite nice. I think it'll be like specific cases that you'll want to use that. But for the most part, my favorites here are hyper aggression and to a lesser extent, swarming instincts. Nearly said a very strange thing there. Cool. Next one. Next slide. Enhancements. Cool. Every army has enhancements. We've got 4 pretty interesting ones. What's interesting about these are that they're kind of defensive. I wouldn't say they're that aggressive. So, for example, you've got Alien Cunning, which can be aggressive, can be defensive. You can forward, you can move, redeploy 3 units, and even put them in strategic reserve, which is quite nice. So, if you get first deployment, you can put some Von Ryan Leapers in the middle of the battlefield to stop your opponent deploying there with their forward deployers. And then just before the battle starts, you go, nah, I'm going to move those, and they're going to go in reserve, or they're going to go in my backfield or whatever. Likewise, you can be really aggressive with this and just put things back into forward deploy. There's no rule that says you can't put them back in forward deploy yet, as far as I know. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But say you if they don't have any forward deploy units, you can just put your Lictors or your Von Ryan Leapers rather in your deployment zone and then redeploy them once you've seen your opponent's deployment. So if they've left a weak spot, maybe those Desolation Marines that have sat there going, oh, we've got a screen, and you can just chuck your Von Ryan Leapers in front of those. If you get first turn, you run at them and kill them. Amazing, super. You can, in fact, get in front of things like Knights. Maybe they can't go through you, or they can't get enough past your base to actually get to where they want to go. Things like that. So it's quite nice. It's probably my second favorite because my first favorite is Adaptive Biology. We get a 5 up, then a 4+ Feel No Pain. What do I mean by this? We get a 5 up to start with, and then once the next turn happens, we then moves to a 4 up Feel No Pain. Really cool. A little bit less admin, a little bit more admin than I'd want to do. And just give me a number, and that'll be my 5 up Feel No. That'll be my Feel No Pain. But it's very cool. A 4 up Feel No Pain is no joke. So that is very cool. I love this on a Hive Tyrant instead of taking Tyrant Guard, because Tyrant Guard are like 95 points or something, and they're not very good. So this is quite cool. We also have Perfectly Adaptive, or Perfectly Adapted, one of the two. You basically, the wording on this makes it a lot worse. This does sound cool, and then you realize it's an or. So you can reroll a wound, a damage, an advance, a charge, or a saving throw a turn. Like what? Like in the old Leviathan book, the old Leviathan, the alternative book, Leviathan had a warlord trait like this, where you could roll each one of those a turn, reroll each one of those a turn. Really cool. But now it's or. So for me, unless I'm reading this wrong, guys, I feel like that sucks a little bit. So it's like this is my least favorite. Last but not least, we have Synaptic Linchpin. So it very much leans into our faction rule of increasing our synapse range. Why is this good? Well, we'll see with the stratagems in a minute, but there's loads of benefits for being within synapse range, not just the battle shock thing that I mentioned before, but you'll be able to get extra value out of being in synapse, which is one of my favorite things about how they've done the Tyranid book. Synapse feels cooler and more like engaging than ever. Speaking of which, stratagems. Right, we've got 6 like everyone else. Number 1, rapid regen. This is a 6 up Feel No Pain or a 5 up Feel No Pain if you're within synapse range. Amazing. Your opponent targets that you put a model out that you really want to survive, or you really want to tank a load of hits. Keep it in synapse range, and you can give it a 5 up Feel No Pain for 1 CP. Amazing. Very nice. Super useful. And of course, if you have a Hive Tyrant, you can do it on 2 units for 1 CP in your turn, which is super cool. We also have Adrenal Surge here. So Adrenal Surge is a 5 to hit, scores an additional critical hit. So what we mean by this is if you've taken lethal hits, for example, and again, sorry guys, this is 10th, I'm still getting my head around it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you've taken the really nice hyper aggression, which is 6s to hit against vehicles and monsters are auto wounds. This will turn it to a 5s do auto wounds, which is super good, right? 1/3 of your dice rolls will auto wound. Whoa! All of a sudden, you're like, whoa! Gene stealers, harm against, things like that will actually be getting wounds through against these things. So that's really cool. I'm a big fan of this. I've used it a couple of times, perhaps wrongly. We'll see in the comments. But as far as I'm aware how this works, I've used it a couple of times myself in games, and I found it to be really useful. Death Frenzy. All right, guys. Do you like gambling? Because I love it. On a 4-up, you fight on death. So again, if you're doing this on a monster, it kind of sucks because it's a 50-50 chance that you won't actually get any value from this whatsoever. But if you're doing this on a unit of Gene Stealers, a unit of Harmagans, a unit of Raveners, things like that, really nice. You obviously have to be in engagement range to do this. You need to be in combat. But it's a really nice way to make sure that if you're going to lose a unit, you're going to get some value out of it. Used this a couple of times, and I've kind of found myself using it on monsters because a lot of the lists I'm leaning to are monsters. So I think that this will probably be one that I don't use that much until the meta changes and we start to take loads more swarmy stuff. Cool. Overrun, really cool stratagem. So this is one of the 2 stratagems we have, which will help you score primary, which will help you deny primary or score primary, get those primary points moving. What this will do is you consolidate 6 instead of 3. Very cool. If you don't know what consolidate is, you basically have to move towards or get an engagement range with the base-to-base contact with the nearest unit, or you can move towards the nearest objective. Cool. Well, what if you can do 6 inches instead of 3 towards the nearest objective? Very nice. I'm a big fan of that. So you're going to get on that objective and be a body on there, maybe denying primary for your opponent the next turn. Now, if you're in Synapse, like I mentioned before, you get bonuses if you're in Synapse. You get to make a normal move. Awesome. Just go in any direction you want. Have at it. Go crazy. Upside down. Whatever you want to do, go. So I'm a big fan of this. I've used it once, and it was great. Super. I think I'll probably end up using it more. It'll be something that I try to increase my skill level on and make sure that I'm doing this in the right way. Next one, Synaptic Insight. Selects an additional hyper adaptation till the end of the battle round. So, like those 3 adaptations I said before, you can stick a unit in another one. Kind of useful. Depends, on your opponent's army. Again, one of the ones I'll probably use less of. It's quite interesting though. Maybe it's as I play more games, I'll find more use cases for this, but for the moment, the other ones are looking a little bit better for me. And then the last one, which is very much a primary player, and it's one of the things I love doing in 9th edition, was bringing back D3+3 endless multitude models to a unit in my command phase. You score your primary at the end of your command phase, so you get to do this first. So you will, if you need a few more bodies on that objective and you've lost a few models from your endless swarm unit, you get to bring them back. Super good. If you're not on an objective, but you're, like a damaged unit is near it, you can bring back some guys and then get that objective. Very, very cool stratagem and super infuriating for your opponents. Very good. So I would recommend that one. I recommend playing with that one if you're going to do a bit of a swarmy list with, especially with I think it's going to be really nice on Neurogons because Neurogons are 45 points. They cost you nothing to put in your army whatsoever, really, and you can just keep bringing stuff back. If your opponent shoots them, like you don't really care because they're pretty garbage for the most part. But God, do they ham up an objective? They are bodies and they love being on objectives. So definitely a useful tool. And obviously you can bring them back and then ladder them out towards objectives outside your deployment zone so they can spread across 2. And hey, that sounds great, right? Awesome. And that's it for this part 1, Tyranids deep dive. Let's go. If you have any questions, any comments, please put in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. We're all learning at 10th, so if I've got anything wrong, soz, I want to hear it if I have. So cool. I'll see you for part 2 and for future episodes of Bugwatch on this channel. Thank you very much.